Hey guys, thanks for tuning in and welcome to MyCryptoSpirit. Today we have Riccardo Spagni, aka Fluffy Pony, as guest. We had to reschedule this interview for like 3 times, so today we decided to do an audio recording because of the lag and the video quality and so on. But nevertheless, this is a great interview. We discuss, of course, Monero, Tari, Magical Crypto Friends in the Magical Crypto Conference. And we have a giveaway from Bitladon. Bitladon was kind enough to support this interview by providing a giveaway. So you have to see our socials. There's a tweet popping up right now, and then you can participate in the giveaway. So hang on, and here is our great interview. Hey ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to MyCryptoSpirit. Thanks for tuning in again, and as you know, today we have as guest Riccardo Spagni, better known as Fluffy Pony. So Riccardo, first of all, welcome. And make a short introduction of yourself for the people who don't know you yet. Well, I don't think they exist, but please give us an introduction.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Riccardo Spagni, and as you correctly pointed out, most people know me as Fluffy Pony.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been involved in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency ecosystem since early 2011, May 2011. And initially spent a lot of time building tools for miners.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big interest of mine. I also started a payment gateway to process cryptocurrency payments, mostly to solve my own problem of miners wanting to pay me in a bunch of different altcoins for the stuff that I was building. And then in early 2014, I got involved with Monero, and I was the lead maintainer of Monero for the past, like 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I stepped down towards the end of 2019.
Nice. All right. And then you recently resigned, like the lead developer of Monero. And what kind of reason has that actually?
Good question. So a couple of things. The first is that I was struggling with time. I have started a new project called Tari, which is a decentralized assets protocol that's built on top of Monero.
All right. Okay.
And so I wanted to spend more time working on that. And so that was definitely one factor, but I think a more important factor was I didn't want to be any form of centralizing force for Monero. So, I didn't want to be the Monero guy. I didn't want to be the person people think of when they talk about Monero, and I didn't want to have undue influence. So it's been a process of winding out, because at the beginning, of course, when Monero is very small, then it's pretty much whoever's willing to do the work does the work. And so a lot of the times that was me. And over the years, I've tried to hand off those responsibilities, and I think we finally gotten to a point now where I do or there's a lot less responsibility for me, and a lot more responsibility for everyone else.
Yeah, of course. All right. We will get back on Tari after Monero, because I looked into it. It was quite interesting. And for the reminder of myself, it's built on top of Monero. Interesting. Well, let's start by Monero, actually. I think the most people saw Monero already in the lists. Monero is a quite common coin. Everybody knows about it, but it has a reason, because it's the best of its sort as privacy coin. Why is that? Because we see a lot of privacy coins out there, but Monero is kinda the real only one if it becomes to privacy. Can you explain a little bit about the market leading position of Monero as privacy coin?
Sure. So I think people in the space, or not in the space, but people that are sometimes on the periphery, seem to misunderstand how becoming a market leader happens and what that normally entails. And by and large, if you look at like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, it's largely about first mover. So,
Yeah.
the first big mover. Ethereum certainly wasn't the first to do stuff that was like smart contracts or sort of programmable money, but they were the first to do so in a very sort of big way that attracted enough attention. The same goes for Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the first digital decentralized currency that was sustainable
Hmm.
compared to like e-gold and digicash and so on. And Monero was the first real attempt at creating a pro-privacy decentralized cryptocurrency. I mean, before Monero, there was a non-coin and so on.
Yeah, of
But
course.
it really had the cryptography chops that they needed to be taken seriously. And so that's why now when you have that first mover advantage, when you have the mind share, then it doesn't actually matter if you have the best technology. I mean, does Bitcoin have the best technology? I mean, arguably yes on some things and no on others. And I think it's less about the technology and more about the
The,
maturity of the code
yeah.
and you
The,
know
the the hash power and the security.
that's it. And mind share as well. What do people think of when they think when you go speak to someone like a man on the street and you say, "Oh, have you heard about Waffle Coin?" They're going to say no. It doesn't matter how cool the technology is. But when you say, "Have you heard about Bitcoin?" Yeah, of course they've heard about Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's really with Monero. It's the same. When you speak to people who require any sort of privacy, it doesn't matter how good the technology of competing privacy coins are. The one that they've heard of the most is Monero,
Yeah.
and because of that, it's forced a couple of things. The first is it's forced us to make really good architectural decisions. Because of the number of people that are using it. So we've made decisions on what technology to build the graphical wallet on, where other projects have made different decisions to their detriment. And that's one aspect of it. And this other aspect is that because you're sort of the de facto privacy currency or pro privacy digital currency, you end up with a sort of monopolizing effect almost, where everyone uses it, or not everyone, but a lot of people use it. And so that means it's really easy to get lost in the crowd because the crowd is big. And if you take a look at a lot of other projects that have less usage, then it doesn't matter again if their technology is brilliant when there's only like 10 people using it. Then the crowd
Yeah.
is just small to get lost in.
Yeah, of course. Okay, but also the technical aspects of Monero. Like now, I saw a few weeks ago with the flexible block size, but also there is no way discovered yet how to track or how to connect a transaction to a wallet address. And if you see like the other competitors, there are several ways already how they are, yeah, how they discovered the real transactions. So what kind of other technique is Monero using on the background instead of like Zcash or I don't know if you would like to mention it, Verge, for example. But there is some way that Monero is different than the others at the technical side. Is that true?
Yeah. So basically, I guess the best thing to do is to explain how Monero tries to achieve privacy. So Monero focuses on five aspects of privacy. The first is that it hides where a transaction is going to. So it does this through something called stealth addresses. And there's no way to reverse this. You can't take a Monero destination on the blockchain and figure out the address that's being paid. The second thing is it hides the amounts that have been transacted. And again, this is real privacy. There's no way to sort of break that and figure out how much someone is sending. The third thing is it hides where a transaction is coming from, and it does this using something called ring signatures. So basically, when you're constructing a Monero transaction, you take a look at the blockchain, you pick a bunch of old transactions, old and newer, and then your transaction appears to be spending all of these old transactions. Now, ring signatures are considered probably the weakest aspect of Monero's privacy, because that aspect, or that act of choosing the old transactions that you are going to appear to be spending from is really difficult, and it has to be consistent, and it needs to look like you are following normal spending patterns, because a lot of people will receive money and spend it pretty quickly. So you can't veer away from that. The appearance of the transactions needs to be uniform, and so this is really difficult. And that's not to say that Monero's privacy is weak in this aspect in the general sense. It's just that this is an aspect of ongoing development so that we can improve it. And then the fourth thing is we hide the IP address that Monero transactions come from. We use that using multiple things. The first is we use Dandelion++, which is a way of broadcasting transactions in a way that defeats anyone who's trying to passively observe where a transaction comes from, which IP address it comes from. And then we also support Tor and I2P for nodes that want to broadcast transactions on privacy mixnets. And then the last thing, which is something I've mentioned already, is the fact that you're getting lost in a large crowd. And so it's sort of relatively, it's pretty much the most important aspect of any privacy enhancing technology, is that you need to have a large crowd to be lost in, otherwise it's pointless.
Yeah, so it's the same as with the Tor network, of course.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can imagine if there were 10 people using Tor, it would be a lot easier to figure out.
Yeah, great. And now Monero is really mature. It's standing. The protocol is running. There is a large community. People are using it. So now, especially in the Dutch community, there are concerns about regulations. We discussed it a lot, especially this year, because now the regulations are popping up. What are your thoughts on the regulations on especially privacy coins in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to say. I think that regulators understand the need for privacy. Some of them don't, obviously, and that's out of everyone's control. But there are a large number of regulators that see the need for privacy in their own lives, and so they will not take a total anti-privacy stance. Monero also is already compliant with things like the FATF ruling and the travel rule and so on. So it's not to say that Monero needs to make any sort of underlying changes to become compliant with existing legislation or regulation. And of course, there's certainly a possibility that some regulators in the future might say, well, listen, we think that this thing needs to be outlawed because we're anti-privacy. Like in Australia, where the encryption backdoor legislation is something that regulators have actually taken seriously, which is totally ridiculous to anyone that understands a little bit about cryptography. So I think that by and large we are we're at a time where there is some regulatory uncertainty in the space, but I think that we're going to see over the next few years we're going to get some more clarity, and I don't think the clarity will be anti-privacy, because if regulators were going to take a strong anti-privacy stance, they would have shut down Tor, they would have shut down I2P, they would have done a lot more damage than they have done already.
Yeah, but like we discussed already, if they shut down Tor, they can't use it themselves also anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in my point of view, it will be the same for like privacy coins, or in this example, a privacy coin. Yeah, I can imagine that there is a need for using this kind of protocol by themselves also, for any reason. So without us as community, there is no use case for them also, of course. All right, the regulations, yeah, many people are seeing it like, yeah, they are doom-minded. We discussed already a little bit about the protocol itself, but there is also one community member of us, it's called Ricardo also, with only one C. And he was a little toxic about wiping out the ASIC miners. So, well, I said to him, well, I will ask to Ricardo with double C. Why was that actually?
So, yeah, I didn't agree with that move. I pushed back on it. I was of the opinion that the path Monero should have taken was to embrace ASICs via a switch to SHA-3, even if it was a timed switch, like some sort of commitment that we're going to switch to SHA-3 in 2 years or something, and then we could do random X in the meantime. Ultimately, the community decided to not go that route, and you can't really, you can't really force the community to do anything.
No.
So yeah, like despite my misgivings and disagreements, I can understand why they went down that road. I think that time will tell as to whether it is or was the correct path. It certainly is an interesting path because it's giving us a lot of information on things that on how quickly companies are moving with technology on the ASIC side of things that we probably wouldn't have had before. So
Yeah.
I'm interested in just seeing how it develops, and then we go from there.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like for forever a decision or something.
Yeah, exactly.
There is still hope for Ricardo. So, like we discussed, you started with a new project in life, with a new challenge. It's called Tari. And Tari, well, maybe we have to hear it from your own words in short lines that the most of the people will understand it. What is actually Tari?
So Tari is a decentralized assets protocol. It's designed to for asset issuers to be able to create assets on a decentralized network, and these digital assets are typically anything that lives and dies and exists in digital form. So as an example of some things that we would consider digital assets, you can think of things like in-game tokens.
Yeah.
Those are obvious ones. Obviously you could issue an entire currency as a digital asset, although that's probably largely unnecessary. You can do stuff like loyalty points, security tokens, tickets, DRM tokens, registration tokens, anything like that. And then of course non-fungible tokens as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Are we talking about all non-fungible tokens, or are it like different tokens? Because if you take a game and you take the economics as a token, then it don't have to be a non-fungible, I guess.
Yeah, so yes and no. I mean, like obviously there's some situations where it's best to have that as a non-fungible token. And some instances where they're better off existing as a fungible token. So you can think about a game like EVE Online, where there are certain power-ups and so on that you might want to have as non-fungible tokens, but then there's also a currency that underpins things, and that can be a fungible token. Same goes for resources. Any game where any sort of MMO or multiplayer game where you have limited resources that you have to harvest or mine or whatever, that's also somewhere or a place where a fungible token could be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, interesting. And it's built on top of Monero. So,
yeah, so architected as a merge mine sidechain on top of Monero.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it's not built on top of Monero in the traditional sense, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that you have to be extremely careful with baking things into the Monero protocol, because you can end up creating a bit of a mess where transactions are not uniform, and that revealing information about transactions, which is obviously something that you want to avoid, because it harms the privacy. So it is a bit of a mixed bag. You have to be extremely careful with with what you add to the protocol. But I think that the way we're doing it is a reasonable way of both benefiting the Monero community and receiving benefit from the Monero security, and also providing people with a path to move in and out of various privacy and scalability mechanisms.
Okay. And is there already something to see that you are beta testing or something?
Yeah, kind of. So there's we're getting pretty close to a testnet launch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of code that's going down at the moment, and that's probably a good place to start for anyone who's particularly interested. But yeah, it is at the moment it is like a deeply technical project, but we're hoping. I mean, we're very focused on usability, and we're hoping to provide people with more and more useful and usable tools.
All right. Well, going to follow it for sure. Sounds interesting. So next to Tari, you have another great love in your life, magical crypto friends. Like I mentioned before the recording, I'm a big fan of the podcast series. But there is also an event coming this year again, because last year we all saw the pictures, and now currently on YouTube we see the talks who are held there. But for the people who are like magical crypto friends, Robert, what are you talking about? Maybe you can explain it better yourself. Magical crypto friends, can you tell us something about the concept?
Sure. So Magical Crypto Friends started a couple of years ago, where someone on Twitter joked that myself, Charlie Lee, Samson Mao, and Whale Panda should all do a podcast. And we sort of went, haha, funny joke. And then I started a group on Telegram between the four of us, and I was like, hey, maybe it's actually not a bad idea. And so that was sort of how it started. And we didn't, I don't think any of us expected it to get particularly popular. We were mostly just mucking around and having fun and talking nonsense to each other. And yeah, like people actually started to like it.
Because that's the content we like,
Yeah, exactly. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We have a lot of fun, and I think that that people are enjoying that. So yeah, we'll sort of we'll keep going with it.
Yeah, of course. And now there is an event coming also this year again.
Yes. So last year we did our first conference, a Magical Crypto conference, and it was interesting because we didn't really know what to expect, but we ended up having like a really great turnout. Really good bunch of people, and I think sort of in hindsight, we learned a lot about putting on conferences. I mean, none of us had any experience with that. And so because of that, we decided that we should do it again. So this year, May 8th and 9th, we're doing Magical Crypto Conference again in New York. And it's going to be bigger. And I think that it's going to be a lot more. I mean, not that the last time wasn't fun, but it's going to be more fun. And yeah, we're expecting a much bigger turnout. And we're just sort of going to feel it out and see how we go. Obviously, we are somewhat concerned about the coronavirus and how that will affect us and affect our ability to put on this conference. But I think there's only so much that you can control. and so we're just sort of moving ahead and as if it's happening. And we've discussed some ideas for what happens if, and what, like if
Yeah.
coronavirus is out of control. But I think it's going to be a lot of if if coronavirus willing it happens, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I think it won't be that much of a problem. I feel a little bit bad right now. Yesterday, my little brother, sent me a message. Hey, listen, they found it in Eindhoven also. He lives in Eindhoven. I saw you were actually there also a year back.
Yeah.
Technical University in Eindhoven. So you have a little connection already with Holland.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I love Holland, and obviously being South African, at least we've got a little bit of the Dutch influence here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the TUE is just such a fantastic university, especially for the advancement of cryptography and a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, it's great to see a little bit of a connection there. I'll always dig a little bit deeper when I ask some guests for the show. Yeah, great. Do you going to visit Holland anytime soon again?
I don't have any plans in the next or any sort of plans to go that side of the world this year, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. Well, if we are going to speculate, Ricardo, now look at the markets of 2020. Look at today. What are your silly or serious predictions about this year? What's going to happen in this space? Are there major things coming around of us? What do you think?
So I think stuff that I'm predicting this year, I'm hoping that we're going to see a more serious uptake in Lightning Network adoption.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of scope for Lightning Network to make Bitcoin more useful, and of course, Bitcoin's utility is certainly not challenged, but it is something where it could benefit from faster transactions and cheaper transactions. So I'm looking forward to that, and to seeing how things go.
And you're not really a big fan of the whole DeFi movement, are you?
Not really. I don't fundamentally have a problem with anyone building stuff in this space.
Mm-hmm.
I do largely find stuff like DeFi that they're often reinventing what already exists, sometimes without acknowledging or realizing it. And you know what I mean? That's not a bad thing. I mean,
Of course.
Sometimes it's good to reevaluate things and go, why does this exist, and can we do it better? But yeah, I do find it does get a little bit long in the teeth where they're constantly just reinventing stuff that exists, and doing so sometimes in a very bad, not a bad way, but in a sort of not very well architected way. So we'll see. I mean, like I think that it's still early days, and there's certainly stuff that can be improved on in the financial ecosystem. But whether the current movement is the right way to do it, well, that remains to be seen.
All right. And how about the non-fungible token movement?
So NFTs are a lot more exciting to me. I think that there's definitely scope for NFTs to be a thing. Mm-hmm. I think that there are a lot of people who are interested in collectibles, digital collectibles, and don't even realize it. There's stuff like Topps trading cards and so on, and people have been doing physical collectibles for a long time, and of course, like there's sort of a subset of digital collectibles that has already been sort of largely and widely used, and that's stuff like in-game assets, if you look at the economies around in-game assets, like
They are huge.
party skins and that sort of thing. Those economies exist sometimes outside of the game manufacturer's control or influence. And so that's really interesting to me. And I think that I'm interested to see how that progresses, and what that actually looks like practically when asset issuers start doing some cool stuff there.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'm really, looking forward. I'm expecting, a new wave of majority in this space this year. So let's hope that it will back out. Ricardo, for all the people who listened now and they want to have more information about you, Monero, or Magical Crypto Friends, where can they reach you? Where they can find your content? Where can they, look up for extra info?
So I'm Fluffy Pony on Twitter, and then Magical Crypto Friends is Magical Crypto on Twitter. And the website is, let me just double check, it's magicalcryptofriends.com. And if you want to take a look at the conference that's coming up in May, it's magicalcryptoconference.com. And yeah, it's May 8th and 9th in New York.
We're going to follow that. And so thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, have a great conference, Ricardo.